Hi, I'm Josh Bishop with another self-defense tip for the week. We're going to cover a little bit more on striking. I know last time I covered 5 or 6 different techniques for the basic hand strikes. We're going to slow things down just a little bit and just focus on one technique at a time. I realized when editing the last video that I had filmed 40 minutes worth of footage and had to cut it down to under 15 minutes, and I left a lot of things out in doing that. So instead of trying to cover a lot of material at one time, I'll save some of that material for future videos so the information will still be available, but we're just going to slow the pace down a little bit and focus on one thing at a time. So today we're going to focus on the front kick. There's a lot of things to consider when throwing a strike or any technique in the martial arts. Range is very important. Whether you're going to snap or thrust that technique, also very relevant, but those are subjects that we're going to cover more in future videos. Today I just want to show you the basic elements of the front kick and how to deliver one without causing injury to yourself. So basically, I'm going to start out from a fighting stance. Now you can throw a front kick from different positions and different angles. I can do it with my hips facing my target. I can do it even with my hips turned a little more sideways as long as I keep this leg aimed in the right direction. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to go almost kind of diagonal in my stance. So Santa Bob here is going to be my target. I'm going to establish a front foot like we've talked about before. One's in the front, one's in the back. And the foot in front, I'm going to keep my toes pointed to the center line of my opponent, and my back foot can kind of turn out at a little bit of an angle, and that's going to keep my hips a little bit more diagonal. I also like to keep my hands up in a guarded position when practicing these techniques. Even if I'm striking a target, Bob is obviously not going to hit me back, or if I'm doing a form or kata, I still keep my hands in a guarded position when I'm kicking, because it's a good habit. There's some styles that will teach you when you throw a kick to throw your hands down by your side, and they say it gives you more power. I can see the mechanics behind that, thrusting the hips forward and pulling the shoulders back. I can see how that could work. Unfortunately, the schools, a lot of the systems that teach that, to throw the hands down by the side, will also tell you that you're not allowed to make face contact. Now, if you're doing martial arts as a sport and the rules of your sport don't allow you to make face contact, great, that will work really well for you. In our school, we do make face contact and we do get bloody noses, and so we encourage our students to keep the hands up and protect the chin. You can still generate power if you're doing the kick properly. You don't have to throw your hands down by your side. So throwing the front kick from here, I have to make sure I'm at a good range. Obviously my leg is longer than my arm. My punching range is right here. I can reach comfortably with my jab, but that's too close for me to throw a front kick. Even if I try to pick my front leg up to kick, I chamber and I'm already jammed. It's already awkward. I'm having to like push away from him to get an effective strike. So I'm going to be just out of punching range to throw that front kick, and I can work with the front leg or the back leg. From the distance I just stepped, it's better executed with the back leg because my supporting foot is going to be closer to the target. So the first step to throwing the kick is to chamber. And chamber basically means the first step of your technique. The first step of this front kick is to aim your knee, to bring it up from the back, point directly at your target wherever you're going to strike, and notice the position of my foot. My toes are bent up and I'm going to strike with the ball of my foot. So as I come forward from the chamber, it extends, strikes in, comes right back out, and back to where it started. So one thing we have to remember when practicing any kick is we don't want to ever kick with our toes. I have seen some systems that practice striking with the toes, but they use it more for striking nerves, pressure points, things like that. They're not coming in and striking with full force. They're using it as more just of a tap, and that takes a lot of control because you're putting yourself at a risk of breaking your toes when you jam them into a target. For this technique, we're going to use the ball of the foot. We're going to keep the foot sharp, the toes are bent back, and we're concentrating all of the force into one point. So instead of hitting flat-footed, if I came up and I hit here with my entire foot, it's diluting the power. It's making the force of the technique spread out across the entire surface of the bottom of my foot, and I'm actually not being precise and directing that energy to one place. So with the ball of the foot from here, you can see it's a lot more effective, a lot more powerful. So we like to number our kicks, number 1 and number 2, and it's very simple. Number 1 is whichever foot is closer to the target. Number 2 is whichever foot is in the back. So my front leg coming up, I want to make sure I'm just out of punching range. My leg is a little bit longer than my arm, so I can't reach in from here, but it's a great technique to lead with. I chamber the front leg, boom, snap with the ball of my foot, and bring it right back out. So a little quicker. Okay. So notice I'm keeping the hands by the chin. I'm not throwing them down by my side. I have a habit of opening my left hand because we work a lot of open hand techniques in some of the martial arts that I practice. So if you do it with your fists closed, it's just as effective. As long as you're keeping your hands up to protect your chin, that's the important thing. Another reason to keep the hands up in a guarded position when you're kicking, not just for defense, but also so you can follow up with combinations. So one basic combination that we teach to the beginners, we're gonna use the jab cross or the front punch reverse punch that we used in the basic hand techniques video, and I'm gonna lead that with the number 2 front kick. So basically if I'm out of range for punching, he's too far away for me to strike with my hands, I can use that number 2 front kick to get closer to him. Bringing it from the back, putting it down in front, and now I'm close enough to follow up with those punches. So a little quicker from this position, right? So another thing you might notice when I'm kicking, my hands do shift a little bit. I'm still using the same mechanics as throwing the arms down, but instead of dropping the hands all the way, you'll notice just a little bit of movement in the shoulders. So the kick goes from here, right? You see the hands move, but I'm not bringing them all the way down by my side. I'm keeping them between my opponent and myself so I can execute whatever technique I need to follow up with after that kick. One other thing that we have to be very careful for when throwing a front kick is that we kick forward and not up. So I've seen a lot of students execute this technique, especially when they're doing their forms and they don't have a target in front of them, and they're trying to impress the instructor or impress whoever, and they throw their kick way up in the air because they're going for that height, you know, because everybody's like, oh, that's a really pretty kick, it went way up above your head, that's awesome. So they'll throw their front kick and they'll go, ha, you know, they'll go way up there. Kicking up can be effective. If we can get our kick all the way up to his chin, maybe Bob is facing me square, and I throw my front kick up, come up, see, even then, it's brushing. When the higher your kick goes, the more you lose distance, the more you lose range. The farthest your front kick is gonna reach is straight out from your hip. I mean, it makes sense. It's like, if I hold my arm here, I can touch his chest. But as soon as I start going higher without moving my body closer to him or farther away from him, as I start going up, you see it starts coming away from that area that it originally touched. Same thing if I move down, going straight out from my shoulder. As I move down, I start losing range. It starts going farther away from him. So my leg, you figure this, head level is not much farther from shoulder level, but you figure for a kick, coming from the hip all the way up to the head, you saw what happened. As I kicked up, it brushed and I lost the range before I even reached his chin. Maybe I could step in and get that distance, but honestly, I've seen it happen so many times. People will try to throw that kick way up high and maybe they don't connect and their other leg comes out from underneath them and they fall down and break a hip. Or maybe their opponent throws a high block, pushing their leg up, taking them down to the ground. It's just too much of a risk for self-defense. There are some tournaments that will actually reward 2 points for a kick to the head. And if you're doing point sparring and you can get 2 points for kicking to the head, great. In a real fight, real self-defense, I really don't recommend kicking any higher than the midsection, the stomach or the chest. A midsection kick, well placed and well timed, could move the attacker away from you using the thrust kick, which we'll explain in more detail, but it's basically just shoving your partner back with your foot, could give you the space you need to escape. So it's just something to think about. Decide if you're training in the martial arts for self-defense or for competition. Now, throwing high kicks is not the worst thing in the world. I've heard the argument made, and it makes sense, that if you can kick to the head, kicking to the knee is no problem. And it doesn't work the other way. If you only train kicking to the knee, you'll never be able to kick them in the head. And that's fine. When I was younger, I loved training with the high kicks. I loved throwing kicks to the head. And a kick is a very powerful technique. If you could throw a round kick to somebody's head, that's a potential knockout. To me, it's just too much of a risk. And when I was younger, throwing all those high kicks, I injured my hip. So I can't pick my right leg up as high as somebody's head, especially from a bladed stance. I can do it forward, not super effective for me anymore though. So if you want to preserve your body and preserve your joints, I recommend keeping it a little more down to earth. Use your arms, your hands for the higher strikes. Use your kicks, for the lower strikes, for self-defense specifically. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the information useful. I've said it before and I'll emphasize this on a regular basis. You should never learn martial arts exclusively through a video. The technique that I demonstrated today is very effective if executed properly, but if executed improperly, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. So I encourage you practice your martial arts under the supervision of a qualified instructor. These videos are meant to aid you in your training and to kind of help you grow in the martial arts, but don't learn exclusively from watching these videos. I'm Josh Bishop. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, do so by clicking the subscribe button below and look forward to our videos each Monday. Thanks a lot.